luminaries, in this video we are going to do a 12 string warp weaving. So this video will be separated into 4 parts, which is 1, warping your loom tool, then weaving it, then removing it, and then finally mounting it onto a stick, or in this case we're going to use a frame. Okay, so what you'll need are a big A loom tool, cotton warp, any type of yarn you have, it really doesn't matter. Could be any weight and any composition. This is a beauty about weaving. It takes any type of yarn. Tassel comb or weaving comb. Snips, a needle. You could use a plastic needle as well. Tape, and that's for weaving. And then what you'll need for removing or mounting your weaving are your mini loom frame, 4 binder clips, or you could have 8 as well. This will act as a vise. Interfacing, if you don't have interfacing, you could use a piece of felt. Glue, and not pictured here, are scissors and a hot iron. Okay, let's get started. I'm gonna go slightly slower than my usual kind of hyperkinetic self in this video because I want to make sure that you get all the details, etc. Okay, so I'm gonna set this aside. I'm gonna put the mounting material off to the side first, since we won't be using that for now. Okay, so what you'll first have is you'll have your big A tool. You're going to take your warp yarn, and this is just a basic cotton warp, and what you're going to do is you're going to turn your loom to the back side and leaving a tail like this, secure to this notch on the most right hand side. Now you're going to take a tiny piece of tape and you're going to tape down the end. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pull taut, going from the bottom to the top, all the way around, up the same notch, like this. So the trick is to pull so that it's pretty taut and that you're going to have 2 warps coming out of each bottom notch. Don't worry if these on top are not perfectly spread out right now. We could fix that later. Okay. Finally, this is the last one. And you're going to do the same. You're going to cut the tail and then cut a small piece of tape. And then secure this down. Okay, so now this is what you'll have. So it's 12 warps going across. So this is now, you could just take your needle and just, you know, move the warp so that it's even, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to just start 2 or 1 stitches. I won't go through all the different types of stitches that you see here, but while we do that, I want to show you that there is, on our website, if you go to Learn, click on here, if you go to Downloadables, okay, here if you click on Weaving Stitches, you could download this piece and it has all the different stitches that I used here. So the tabby stitch is something that I use the most. It's just over, under. Sumac I love. I think it's so pretty. It's like this kind of chevron. This is the one. And then if you want to do slits or blocks of color, there's a diagram for that. Interlocking is what I use a lot too. Interlocking is basically weaving and connecting 2 different colors together. And Raya knot I use occasionally if I want to have details on the bottom. Okay, so that's a resource for you. I recommend downloading that because I think mixing stitches is really nice. Okay, so let's take a color. So I'm going to take this light green. You know what, why don't I take this green, because it's actually a little bit darker and it would just give more of a contrast. It'll be easier for you to see. So you don't have to cut yourself a long piece. This is about 18 inches. 18 inches goes a long way with a weaving, especially this size. Okay, so what I'm first going to do, this is my trick. There's going to be a lot of weaving resources on the internet, so it's completely up to you, but I find this works really well. What I like to do is I just like to take my needle and I just like to pick a warp in the middle here. See how I'm doing under, under, under? So I'm just going to go under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, and I'm starting in the middle here rather than the end, because that actually really helps me later on. I don't have to weave in the tails that much when I do it that way. Okay, so taking your tassel comb or your weaving comb here, I always call it the tassel comb because that's primarily what we use it for as well, and push your weaving down, and now you're going to go in the opposite. So if this is over, you're going to go under. Okay, so you're just going to alternate your over under weaving stitches, and they should be opposite of the rows that you had just woven as well. Again, taking your weaving comb, push it down. So also the trick is that just make sure you don't pull the last the last piece right here too tight, and then you're going to end up pulling the weaving in. So just have it sit right there. I'm going to do a couple more rows, okay? See how the comb comes really in handy. If you don't have the comb, you could use the tip of your needle to push down your weaving as well. As you pull through, sometimes I like to hold this down and pull gently, and then push down, and then I just take this opportunity, I hope you could see that, and I just pull a tiny bit, so just enough so that it's good. Okay, let's do one more row. So under, over, under, over, under, over. Sometimes I design a pattern before, but most of the time I don't. Usually I get my collection of yarn ready, and if you're working in similar colorways or just beautiful yarn, your piece is always going to come out beautiful. I like mixing color yarns, but you could also do one solid one as well. Okay, so this is good. So now I'm going to stop with this color, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just stop it in the middle of the weaving here. See how I'm doing under, and then the rest here is under. That's going to be really helpful for me later when I turn the weaving around, and I'll show you on this as I remove it. Okay, I'm just going to leave this for now, and then I just cut a tiny tail. And then, you'll just continue to weave all the way up. You could weave up as high as pretty much up here above this hole. For us, when we frame the weaving, I just go a little bit right below this. And before I take it off the loom, I make sure with putting the frame over. So here now, you'll just go, you could, implement your interlocking, your color block, your sumac weave, whichever one, and just continue to weave. You can never go wrong. It just ends up looking really, really cute. Okay, so pretend I'm done, and this is the result. Let me remove all of this. And now what you're going to do is you're going to take your weaving, turn it around, and take off the tape. And now with your snips or scissor, just cut the first two on each side. Okay, and I'll show you why. Don't cut all of them yet. So these two are cut, which means also the same as the two down here. Okay, now what you're going to do is you're going to pop this out gently, and you're going to make a knot. So working slowly is slowly and gently I should say, is going to come in handy. So make your knot, okay? Do the same for this. I like to just do knots on the four corners here so that that anchors me the entire time as I remove the piece off the tool. Okay. Now I'm going to do, and see how this is longer? You could actually just cut this off now if you like, so that it's not in your way. Just leave about 3 inches. Okay. Now we're gonna take these two and then tie a knot. Okay. Okay, do the same for this one. And then now the next, once you do this, we're just going to repeat this for the entire weaving. I'll do a couple and then I'll fast forward and then we'll meet back. Okay, so now you have your 4 corners done. Now what you're going to do is you could cut all of these, and what I recommend you doing is cutting right here. So basically just right below the hole there. Okay, this will release the weaving, and then just gently take this out. Okay, identify your 2, and then you're going to tie, and you're going to continue to tie the knot for all the up here and then down here. Okay, I'll fast forward this part and I'll meet you back. Okay, so all of the ends are tied here, and now what you're gonna do is you're gonna bring in your hot iron. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna iron these down so they're kind of going in the same direction. It's just gonna make it easier for us to work and finish up the weaving. Okay. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna deal with all of these, you know, extra pieces that's hanging. So there's a couple things. So remember when I was weaving and I said if you start your weaving in the middle, sometimes you actually end up never having to weave in your ends. You could just actually cut it about, you know, 1/4 of an inch away from where it ends. That's the nice thing about kind of starting in the middle and then weaving another rows on top. However, there are pieces, like this is the first piece that I started, it just hanging out there, and also the last piece, it's also usually hanging out there. What you'll do is you'll weave, this is what we call weaving in the tail. So you'll just take, you know, your needle, stitch it under 1 or 2 stitches, thread your yarn and pull through. Now if you're working on a really big scale one, this is what you would do. This is what I would recommend you doing. Okay, so let me do the same for this. Again, just gonna get one stitch, put it under my needle, then pulling it through. Now with this bulky yarn that I'm working with, some are just really will be harder to hide. So this is already tucked in. So I'm going to cut. This one is just hanging out there. See? So this is the one that I'm going to try to stitch into, weave into one of the stitches. Again, because this is a small scale, weaving it into just one stitch is more than sufficient. Just trim this tail. Just going to work that. So just work gently. It's pretty thick yarn. So you want to pull it so that it looks good on the front. Just always check the front too to make sure it looks good. Now you could trim. And again, the same for this. This one, I think it's already tucked in. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut. You'd save these scraps to make pom-poms later on if they're long enough. It's really nice. Okay, so this one I'm just gonna also, I'll just go ahead and thread this first before. And then I'm just gonna tuck it into, I'm gonna tuck it in this one. So just weave that in. Again, going gently, gently. Okay, making sure it looks good in front. It doesn't look that great, so I'm going to pull it a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so, whoops. Whoops, okay, I have one more. So let me also weave this one in. Once it's in, cut. Okay, now if you're going to hang this up, oh, I have one more, see? This one. Pull that down. Okay, so if you're going to mount this on a rod, so that it hangs like a tapestry, you would just make sure that this is, I like to actually keep the bottom part because I think it looks really nice. It gives it some length. It gives them a visual interest. You would take a rod. I'm trying to see if I have a rod around. So let's see, I have this rod. If you want to just hang it like a tapestry, you could do one of two things. You could put this rod here, and then you can weave in each individual warp so that it, so that the rod is held up and hanging on all the ends that's woven in. Or you could do it this way as well. So I'm going to show you. Is taking your interface, or this could be felt, and you're going to cut, I think this is about 1/4 inch. Okay, I'm going to show you first how I would finish this weaving with the rod, and then again mounting it on a frame. So make sure your interfacing is facing downwards. That's the sticky side. And now what you're going to do is you're going to hold this here, bring back your iron, and you want to iron down all of those warp. Okay, making sure it's flush against the top end of your weaving. So this looks pretty good. You always want to turn it around and just make sure it looks good on the front side. Okay. So now what you're going to do is you're going to just make sure that your warp is nice and neat. And they're all kind of just looks good like this. Oh, see how this one is below? So let me just re-thread that. Here we go. And now I'm going to take my interfacing and I'm going to iron it down. Trim if it's a little too long. And now set your iron on, holding it down for about 5 seconds. Okay. And now what the interfacing is doing is that it's acting as glue. Okay. And now what I like to do is I just like to trim this off. Now, if you're working, like I said, with a larger scale, I don't recommend doing it this way. In a smaller scale, since you're mounting it, no one's going to see the back. This is totally fine. So if you are mounting it on a rod like this or to a necklace, this is what you would have. You would be done. Now we're going to move on and actually mount it on a frame. So I'm going to bring back all of my material that I need for this, which is glue, the vise or the binder clips, the frame. I'm going to remove this and I'm going to repeat the same process for the bottom warp, which is folding it in to the back of the weaving. Okay. And this piece of yarn kept kind of bouncing off to the side, so I'm going to take the opportunity and press that down as well in place. Okay. Doing the same, cutting about a 1/4 inch piece, and then you're going to use that to help secure down the loose warps. Okay, and now I'm going to cut the extra warp. And now what I like to do, you don't have to do this part, but I actually like to do it because I think it just looks a little bit neater, is that we're going to cover this whole back. So let's cut a piece. This is the sticky side. Okay, and then let's press this down. This is good. Oh, look at how pretty that is. I just love these pieces. I think they're so pretty. Okay, so let me take out everything so this work area looks a little bit neater. All you need is now your glue, your frame, a needle, and then at least 4 vices or clamps. Okay. Now what you're going to do, I like E6000. I think this glue is great because it also dries really clear. So first what we're going to do is we're going to mount the glue, mount the weaving onto the piece. So you're going to put the glue on within this outline box that's on our frame. And that's actually the demarcation of the size of the weaving. Okay. You want to make sure that your weaving sits right in there. Now, if you had made your weaving a little too small, or a little small, this is an opportunity where you could actually use your finger to manipulate it a bit and push and pull your weaving so that it's within that box. Okay, now you just let that just sit for just literally seconds, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in just a piece of paper. This way your surface stays neat and the glue doesn't get on it. So now what I like to do is I just like to put a little bit of glue, just a tiny bit of dab. And now we're going to apply the glue onto the frame. So let me see which one is the front. Okay, so this is the front. This looks nice. And I'm just going to put it around here. You could actually also put it here if you like. It's totally up to you, but I find this, doing it this way, a little bit cleaner and a little bit easier. And so you're just going to put a thin coat. This glue dries really fast, so you want to work pretty quickly. It dries really clear, which is really nice. Okay. Now rub off any excess on the side. You could do that with your finger. Oh, there's a lot of excess right here. Oops. Perfect. And now you're gonna just put this on. Okay, just align it. And now you're gonna bring in your vise. And, okay, this is a little bit off, so I'm just gonna move it. I could tell that this is a tiny bit off, so I'm just going to manipulate it, loosening my vise, and then using my hand to push. Okay. See how that's a little bit off? Looks good now. Okay, so if you have eight vices, you just put additional 4 at the corners. And you're going to leave this to dry for at least 8 hours. This way it's really, really secure. I usually put a pin in the back like I did with these ones, since this doesn't have a hole on top. So this is what they would look like if once they're framed. Let me show you. These are so cute. We did these in terms of seasons. And I think this was summer. Yep. So spring, summer, fall, winter. So this looks really good. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you have any questions, definitely DM us or include your comments below, and enjoy your weaving.